Good morning, first grade. So this week we have a new jump roping pattern for you to work with. And I would like you to jump the two patterns like we were starting to talk about last week, our evens. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, and then backwards. And then the other thing I would like you to practice this week with your jump rope is the tens pattern. And there you start at 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, 110, 120. And then again, all the way backwards. So that is your jump roping practice for this week. Today, I want to start with talking about our story from last week about Otaki and Tatanka. And as we talk about what happened in our story, we're going to draw the picture of it. And I'll go pretty slow today, but if you ever need to, you can always pause to catch up, or you may do your drawing later after you watch the video. So, where did we start with the story? At their home, when they received a basket from Mother in which to set off and gather some green onions from the river. And what did they take along as their snack? They had how many corn cakes? 2 corn cakes. And how many apples? 4 apples. So the first thing I'd like to draw is their home. I imagine that they live in a teepee, which is rather triangular. You can show that how you like. And then I thought we could show their basket right next to it. And putting some weaving and a nice handle. And then inside the basket, you can draw their snack for the day. You can draw 4 little apples and 2 corn cakes, or whatever can be seen peeking out the top of the basket. So they set off on their journey, and they walked for a while and then came to the woods. And what did they find in the woods? They had to stop and collect some what? Some chestnuts, yes. And Tatanka climbed up the chestnut tree. So here we show the chestnut tree. And you may draw it with nice green leaves. And then you can show those ripe brown chestnuts in the tree. And how many did they collect? You can draw them laying on the ground after Tatanka shook them down out of the tree. They collected 6. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So then they added them to the basket and arrived at the river. So down in the corner of my page, and let me use my forest green to show the path they were walking along. And I'll show the river. And they sat on the way there to have their snack. And so what did they take out of their basket to eat first? That's right, they're 2 corn cakes. So you can show the log they sat on. And if you'd like, you can add some crumbs from the corn cakes. And then there on the riverbank, they went to play in the river and enjoyed themselves, and of course, they took care of their task, which was to pull up their green onions. So I will show those onions by the side of the river. And how many onions did they need? That's right, 6 of them, just as Mother asked. So they next played in the river, and then they dried themselves off, and then they had their tasty apples. And how many apples did they eat again? 4. So if you'd like, you can show the apple cores laying on the bank. Although perhaps they were so hungry they ate it, core and all. So there are some apple cores on the bank, and then they took their path back towards the house, but they stopped somewhere on the way, didn't they? They spotted some delicious blackberry bushes. I will show those bushes, and we should show the berries on there. And how many of those berries did they collect? They must have been some big, juicy berries. Now, they had eaten their 4 apples there, and they collected each, how many berries? 5 each. So if they each collected 5, how many did they collect altogether? That's right, they collected 10 to put into their basket. So you can show those 10 there if you'd like. Now they have how many things in their basket? Quite a few, and we will count together at the end. Now they walked home, but when they were on their way, they were so tempted by those berries they couldn't help themselves, and they had to eat a few. So how would we show that they ate some of those berries? Perhaps you can show one of their hands. And show that sticky berry juice on there. Put a little bit of berry juice at the ends. You could show yours using blue, or maybe your blackberries are a nice purple. So when they finally reached home, they had their delicious stew. You can show a bowl of that yummy stew. And they had a wonderful campfire, and they roasted their chestnuts and had them with their dinner, or perhaps after. So there's their fire, and the bowl of stew next to it. Yum, yum. Now, when we've all completely finished our drawing, we're going to go back and write some numbers on here. So I'm going to choose one of my stick crayons. You may choose your red or blue pencil if you would like. Here's my blue crayon. And I'm going to show what happened in our story using my numbers. So first I want to say how many things were in the basket. And I'm going to show that there were 6 things in the basket. 4 apples, 2 corn cakes. Now, if they arrived at the chestnut tree and they added 6 chestnuts. What symbol should we use? Yes, the plus or addition symbol. So we'll write plus. And how many chestnuts did they find? About 6. So then they came to the log and they ate their tasty corn cakes. Now, if they had 6 items in their basket and added 6 more in, how many items were in the basket? I'll give you a moment to think. There were 12 items in the basket. Then if they ate 2 of their corn cakes, how many did they take out? They took out 2. And what symbol would we use for that? Our subtraction symbol, our minus sign. So I'm going to write minus 2. And here, and how many did they have now? If they had 12 and they took away 2, how many things are in the basket? 10. And then they came and collected their 6 green onions. How many things are in the basket now? You think while I write it. 10 and 6 makes 16. It's getting to be a very full basket. Then they swam and they played, and then they ate those delicious apples. Now, if they ate their apples and took out 4 big tasty apples from the basket, 16 take away 4 leaves how many things left? That's right, they're back down to 12. And I'll show minus 4. Now they had 12 items, but now they come to the blackberry bushes and they add 5 each into their basket. So if they have 5 each, they're adding 10 more things. So if they had 12 items in their basket and add 10 big, juicy blackberries, how many will they have now? 22 items in their basket. Let me show that we are adding 10. Now, if you want, you can show plus 5 and then plus 5 again from the other bushes. Now they have 22 things in their basket, but they got hungry again and ate those 8 berries on the side of the road. So if they took away 8 from that 22, what did they end up with when they arrived back at home? You think about that as I write minus 8 here by their sticky hands. Well, they had 22 items, they took away 8. They ended up bringing home 14 items in their basket. And I'll write that right here next to the finer. That's their final amount, so they did come home with more than they expected to. So, great work. I can't wait to see how that drawing turns out for each of you. Now, our next task today is to put our I vowel family into our I house. Actually, before I move on, let me show you a close-up of our drawing. And I can attach a photo of this as well. So we are to our third house, and we need to add our next eyes. So our words today are zip and did. Z-I-P and one of our memory words, D-I-D. Then we have his and tin. H-I-S and T-I-N. Now I'm going to go up to the top for my next ones. And I have two here that rhyme next. I have big and wig. B-I-G and W-I-G. And our last two words today to add to that I house are rip and kid. R-I-P and K-I-D. Very good. Those houses sure are getting very full. So, our last things to do today are to practice with your number line. And let me show you an example of what we'll do. So, when you have your number line, you're going to do a couple different problems and use your number line to solve them. So, an example would be starting at 5, where do you think you would end up if you count up 6? So I don't have my number line quite finished yet. And so I'm going to show you here. Let's say I have 3, 4, 5. This is where I want to start. Now I'm thinking to myself, I'm starting at 5 and I want to add 6. Now, before I point and jump on my number line, I want you to try predicting. Just thinking to yourself, where do I guess that I might end up on my number line? So if I start at 5 and I'm counting up 6, I have a guess of where I'll end up. Tell me what your guess is. Let's see if it's true. So if we're starting at 5 and we're counting up 6, and here is where you get to go out into your yard or your neighborhood and find yourself a good stick to point with. Something that will be strong and straight, but easy to keep around. I'm going to use my finger today. Starting at 5, jump forward 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I ended at 11. Is that what you guessed? Is that what you predicted? If you did, you're correct. 5 plus 6 is 11. So I have a couple other problems to practice using counting up. And as we also call that, addition or plus. Now I want you to do also a few with subtracting, taking away. So let's start at the same number. Let's start at 5. If I start at 5 and I want to take away 3, let me first guess and predict. All right, I have my prediction. Now let's check and make sure. Do you have a guess? Let's see. 1, 2, 3 jumps backwards, and we end up at the 2. That was my prediction. Is that what you guessed? If you did, you were correct. 2 is where we end up. So there's a couple other to practice counting up and counting down and trying to predict where you'll end up before you even try it. Now, 2 more thoughts. My next one is about our seal problems from the other day. Now, I asked you a couple of questions about some seals and asked you to write some number sentences. Now, I want you to think about those number sentences. So I said if you have 4 seals in the water and 5 more join them, how many seals do you end up with playing in the water? And that was 4 plus 5 equals 9. And I said if a seal had some fish, 2 fish, and then had 6 more fish, how many fish would the seal have eaten? So you should have written 2 plus 6 makes 8 fish altogether. Now, I have a question for you, something to think about. If we're adding our numbers, and we said 4 plus 5 makes 9, and 2 plus 6 makes 8, I wonder, is it still true to say 5 plus 4, will that still equal 9? And if we switch these two, 6 and 2, and we say 6 plus 2, what will that make? Will that still make 8, or will that make something different? Something to think about today. During morning lesson, if you still have time this morning and would like to have a little something more to practice, you may play war with your family. I sent home some decks of cards, and perhaps you have some at home as well. Use whatever deck works for you, and you can play. Remember, you lay down 2 cards, see which is bigger. You can either take away all the face cards and just use 2 through 10, or you can add the face cards in and use them as well, whichever way you'd prefer to play. After our morning lesson time, for activities today, you may use the capital letter sheet that is in the folder that your parents can find for you. And you can use a pencil or a crayon and you can trace over. So starting with A, there are directions for which way to go. Go A, tracing over with your crayon or your colored pencil. And then on a lined piece of paper, one of our nice big lined ones, I want you to practice that capital again about 2 times, remembering, most importantly, sky to earth, always top to bottom, and your good pencil grip. Then you may put into the back of our letters books, our morning lesson books, our next 5 memory words that you've now got firmly up in your head. They, the, it, are, and was. and you shouldn't have to look at anything to write them. But if you need to check, then make sure you practice them a couple more times. All of those words are red words, I believe, except for it. So put them in the right column, please. And then our new word for today is spelled S-O. So put that on a card and start practicing. And you say it, how do you think? So. Very good. So, speaking of which, have fun with those things today, and I will see you tomorrow.